It gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker for the day. Dr. Abiruchi Ojha is an assistant professor at the MMAJ Academy of International Studies, Jamia, Millia, Islamia. She completed her PhD in International Studies at JNU, where she was awarded the Indian Council of Social Science Research doctoral fellowship. Her doctoral thesis was on the dynamics of gender and citizenship in post-apartheid South Africa. Her latest publication is an edited book, South Asian Women and International Relations from Palgrave Macmillan, Springer Nature, Singapore. So her publications have explored the linkages of gender, politics, and identity. She's also presently working on examining the intersection of gender and technology with a special focus on artificial intelligence. Thank you so much, Dr. Ojha, for joining us. We are looking forward to your talk because we know about AI, but we also want to know about the other A, which is accountability. So looking forward to you. Over to you.
All right. So as you can see, I'm really down with a very bad viral. So what I'll try to do is to keep my video off and share a presentation so that it distracts you a bit away from the voice quality that I have. So I'll start sharing, and there we go. Can you see the PPT?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, all right. So today, the topic that I have chosen for myself is building gender-sensitive AI systems, developing the 3D designer, development, deployment AI accountability framework. This is in context of much of the discussion that has been happening of late regarding artificial intelligence. And one of the reasons we were wondering, because AI has been there for quite some time in different ways, and we were wondering why is it that there's so much discussion now, and maybe that's because we have emergence of generative AI, and that's why people are sort of started discussing about it more, and the social and political impact of it. I've been working on AI for some time now, and we have been looking at the governance aspect of it in terms of technology. Do remember this picture that you have on your screen. I'll come back to it when I move on with the slides. So we know that every time that there is a technological revolution that happens, any technological leap, it really radically transforms the society. It could bring in positive changes in a society. It could also be disruptive to existing social structures, which also destabilizes its existing socio-political orders. We have seen it from the time of gunpowder. We have seen the impact of, in historical sense, the first industrial revolution that had happened, and because of which there's a hegemony that has gotten established, which we are still grappling with in the contemporary order. So technology, I'm using to understand AI in this particular framework, but there are other ways that AI has also been understood, especially in philosophy. So we have a lot of philosophers who are looking at AI in terms of species. So we recently had interaction with Professor Deguchi, who has talked about possibility of looking at AI as another species, a fellow traveler, and he has developed a friendship model, which he calls V-turn. So the argument is there are different ways in which interaction, political thinking, political philosophical interventions are happening vis-a-vis AI. For this presentation, I'm looking at it in terms of technology, and the argument that I'm using is from critical technology studies, which says that technology is basically embedded in power structures, and it is shaped by them, and it also shapes the social and power structures. So there is nothing neutral about technology, and that's the argument. Whatever is the social cleavages that we would have in a society, that gets impacted in myriad different ways. And when we have technological transformation, so if we look at the aspects of our identity which are informed from race, caste, class, gender, sexuality, or other kinds of marginality, you would have them being impacted one or the other fashion by technology, and technology in turn also shapes it. In contemporary time, it has been argued that we are living through fourth industrial revolution, and this is also an age of AI. Now, when we look at the world, we know that there is a particular fashion in which we have been oriented to look at it. This orientation is literally the global north on top and the global south on the southern end. The map that we I'm sharing over here has a very different view, because we know that maps are subjective, and this is a map that I also use to in my students, if they are here, they would know, uh, to question this idea of hegemony that is operative in the international arena. Same is true when we are talking about technology as well. So there is a hegemonic flow of technology, which then in turn reinforces global marginalizations. So we would have at times new marginalities that comes into picture, and old marginalities that have been in the global order that gets reinforced. For from speaking from the global south, when we talk about technology at large and specifically artificial intelligence, we have the tech ecosystem that is situated, aimed at, manufactured in the global north. And when that gets shaped, it flows to the global south. This is a hierarchical relation, and this was also hegemonic because alongside we also have values that flows from the global north to the to the global south. Therefore, the requirement is that we have academics and industry and policymakers, social activists, all of them proactively engage with the technological change that are happening in our contemporary time. But it also looks at the dynamics of power that is operating in technology, not just at national level, but also at the global scale. And therefore, I have introduced both of these levels of analysis, so to say, for you to sort of think about. It also requires that we constructively direct the uh, technological transformation towards an inclusive and sustainable manner. Because if we do not direct it, then whatever are the problems in the society, they are only going to be mirrored in much larger and concentrated fashion in the years to come. So what is required is a political solution to the problem that we are talking about. Now, before I move on to the next slide, I also wanted you to sort of have a look at this picture and remember this. As I said, whenever we have a depiction of the future, this future is whitewashed future. Whenever we have a depiction of technology, especially if you type with the keywords AI, you would have one of the images of a humanoid, which will be most likely white, in a minimalist architectural setting. This is an image, of course. It is a creation of the human mind, but it also tells you what is not there. The complexity of human experience, the diversity of humanity, the colors that represent all of us, and especially somebody who is a brown person, this really seems as a problem. And that is where I'm saying that technology is not neutral. It could be gendered, it could be patriarchal, it could also be hegemonic in racial sense, and there are several such axes through which technology is received by us. And now let me go to the sort of background of the framework that I'm talking about. So if we acknowledge that there is a power dynamics that is operative in the way AI revolution is unfolding in contemporary time, and we know several presents. I'm speaking in the afternoon of this conference, and there have been several speakers before me, and all of them at great length have taken their time to explain how the unfolding of technology, specifically AI related, algorithm related technologies, are gendered in nature. So if we accept the fact, if that's the premise from where we are standing, we know that to address the question of power and also the gendered nature of AI, we have to look at the entire AI life cycle, especially because as a technology, AI is different. When we are talking about SaaS, which is software as service, it is something where you don't need much investment. So you can come up with any AI startup. You would have less than no investment at all. And it's also very easy because, in terms of downloading and keeping in your system, it doesn't really require that much of data. Um, and hence, something which is so accessible and easy uh, is also something very accessible and easy for biases to be spread if really not checked at the early stage of it. But the argument is that it's not just at the beginning in terms of designing, but the entire life cycle is where you would need a regulatory framework if one has to believe in an inclusive future for everyone. The argument that I'm presenting here, this is part of a study that I and my co-author have already done. So theoretical aspect of it is something which is already out there. So the intervention has to be done at three levels, which is at the level of the designer, um, then level of development, and also at deployment levels. And therefore, this idea gave us the foundation of the 3D AI accountability framework that we have developed together theoretically. Um, so the question then uh, is there gender sensitivity that is there in AI systems? Should there be gender sensitivity in AI systems? Um, and how can there be gender sensitivity in the AI systems? The first argument is that we have lack of diversity in AI development community. Now, this is something I assume would have been already discussed because, as I said, I'm speaking really in the afternoon. Um, we know that, first of all, we don't even have data of how many people from different sexualities or different genders are AI developers, because that's not the kind of data set that any agency collects. So you would not really know. The only way that one can look at AI development communities is in binary sense, because that is the kind of data that is available. So the market is going to tell you how many men and how many women are developers, and that is how it is being collected. If you would also try to figure out how many persons with disability or how many racial groups, I am also here to tell you that that's also not the kind of data that will be readily available. Hence, the easiest possible data that is available is more in the binary sense, and that's also very gloomy because we know. And this depends on which data set are you referring to. It will be between somewhere between 22 to 28 percent of the development community would be women in a essentialized sense, which basically means that we would not have many persons from different kinds of identities. The community predominantly is basically male and white and situated in what we understand as global north. You would not have many people of color. You would not have many people who would be women or from other identities, and persons with disability who would be there. And this lack of diversity is a problem that gets reflected in how AI works. Um, then the data that is available, that data that is fed to the AI, is also gender biased data, because that's the kind of majority data that is there out there. So not just gender biased, it has all different kinds of biases, and AI is fed this data from coding system, from the side of the coders. And the AI, as of now at least, is is to some extent autonomous, not largely so, but whatever little autonomy and possibility of learning that it has on its own is also based on the data that is out there, which is very biased, and it's also biased in all kinds of sense. So you would have global hierarchies which will be there, and marginalizations of all kinds are represented. Now let's look at a few examples, and I'm not going to get into detail of it because I don't really have that much of time here with me. So let's look at how this operates. So say for instance, if you would have banking sectors, and sadly this is still a place where algorithm is used for sorting out different client relations, and one of them is to look at the credit worthiness. Credit worthiness is a problem because contemporary AI system shows women as not as much credit worthy, and especially other people who would be from marginalized sections as credit worthy, which impacts their ability or inability to have access to.
Sorry to interrupt, ma'am, but you have a minute to wrap up, ma'am. We are running
Oh,
late on time. Yeah,
okay.
I'm
So
so sorry. You can continue, ma'am.
yeah. So I'm going to sort of just float these words over here, which is you would see this in banking and recruitment and healthcare, and also in terms of how democracy works, because this gets translated in the lives of people in real sense. Now, the proposal that we have is that we need to have an AI accountability framework that works at three different levels, as I said. At designer level, there are two ideas. One is that there has to be more representation, which means we have to train more and more people to be coders to engage with AI. And second is that even those who are there, everybody, people from diverse backgrounds, but also all those who are already there have to be sensitized, and this sensitization has to be audited. And a certification has to be given to any company to have an AI operative system and to be out there in the market, provided they have gone through this. So they are answering towards representation and sensitization, both of these things. Now, in terms of development level, we need to have identified prohibited AIs that a European Union Act has already been able to do, is that we need to have gender red lines. And we know that money can buy everything, but whether money should buy is a question that one of the philosophers, Sandel, had asked, and that's a question with which we are going. We need to also have, on the second level, at this at development level, we need to have inclusive parameters, which basically means that we need to have a data set that is informed from cultural specifics. We know that patriarchy doesn't really work everywhere in the same fashion.
Ma'am, I'm really sorry. I will really have to stop you now here because we are really short on time and
Okay,
there
my
might be
mistake.
questions. No, no,
Yeah.
ma'am. We understand it's a tight-knit schedule. So really
Yeah.
sorry.
So
It's a
I
very
will
interesting
sort of
presentation.
leave you with this. I'll leave this slide over here and I'll stop sharing, and we can,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So we'll take the comments by the chair and then just one question by the chair and then we'll conclude the session.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Ojha, and we really apologize for the lack of time. It's a very interesting talk. I feel like this is the kind of conversation we need to be having because of the kind of AI that is coming out. Like when China comes out of an AI, we are suddenly concerned about national security. So my question to you is, what exactly is the cost that you consider when we are talking about inclusivity? And do you think this cost is something that the people who are creating AI are feel accountable enough to invest in making it inclusive or even to gender sensitize it, especially when we see that AI is being misused a lot, especially when we think of gender violence, especially violence against women? So if you can just answer that.
And to quickly add to it, do they really care about it? Because they are in an AI race where they really want to get whoever wins the race wins everything.
Yeah. So, see, these are very broad questions, and I didn't really figure that this is how I'm supposed to sort of engage. But these are pertinent questions, and one thing that you must understand is when I started working on AI, and we had given the feedbacks to different bigger companies, when Facebook used to be Facebook, and it had asked a lot of people from different sectors what are the problems regarding algorithm and if you need to flag it. People had given submissions and it was flagged. Some of it was taken into consideration, some of it was not. Willingness of companies is something which is very subjective, and hence you need law. Because once something is illegal, say for example, the kind of sorting out the Sully problem that we had, where a lot of people, especially women's data set that was available through OpenAI. OpenAI, it was gathered together, and women were basically auctioned. This kind of a problem that would not really happen if you have a proactively existence of law, and that could happen. So now, after the European Union law has been passed, it has been implemented in EU. This kind of thing is not possible. In African Union and African countries later on has adopted, so that similar kind of problem would not happen. We are still making from our Indian context. So when there is competitiveness, there is also competitiveness in the sense of global responsibility as well, because all the countries are also party to what is called as global digital common, and they are all signatory to it, which basically means there are lots of enforcement things that they can bring in. But I guess maybe this is not really a platform, because I couldn't sort of figure out this is how it's going to be. But yeah, so lots of things, issues that you guys were discussing is something that have been sort of thought through. There have been discussions and people are involved and they are working on it. But if we have other time, maybe this is not the space to discuss that. If we have time somewhere else, maybe we can have discussions in this matter.
Sure. Thank you very much, Dr. Abiruchi Ojha, for that amazing presentation. I would have loved to, really engage with. Actually, there's a question that, somebody is asking me to ask very. So I'll just ask that. How can the 3D AI accountability framework ensure the gender sensitivity is embedded at every stage, from design to deployment, rather than just being an afterthought in AI development? So that's a question that you
Yeah.
can take quickly.
So the way that it happens is, see, an AI can come to market to the client only when company creates it, and it goes through a screening process. What we have started doing now is that we have asked that we want to be an AI, nation, and we would want more and more startups to come, and they're all recognized because we don't have a law at place as of now. When we have that, everybody has to go through a certification process, like you have in any other consumer good. You need to have a certification. Without that, you can't really run a company, and this model is meant to inform that certification process, so that you can't really not have any of these things in place and still get certified. So it's like a check for accountability, and it is rooted in philosophical and ethical questions of this time, because AI is, like I said, is not just any other technology. I also talked about the fellowship model and other kinds of things. So there are larger questions that are at play. But yeah, I guess, sorry.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much. We'll have a discussion in Jamia sometime with you
Yes, please.
about this. Thank you to our chair, Juby, John, for joining for this session. Thank you to both our rapporteurs, Rukmani and Tanvi, for this session. And thank you to the entire center for organizing this amazing conference at this pertinent time. So let's move on to the next session quickly now.